Welcome back to another episode of Film Facts Stats. We are a notch above your group chat. I am Jack Coyle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mason Wood, football editor for Back Sports Page, as well as a contributor to Shy City Sports. Mason, how are we doing tonight, my friend?
Doing good. We got lots of college football to talk about, and definitely excited to talk about some of my picks. My lock of the week is feeling good, especially after a win last week. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Also joining us is our other co-host, Freddie Freeman. Freddie is a professional handicapper, a film aficionado, and normally our resident NFL expert. Freddie, what is it that we're going to be talking about today, my friend?
Yeah, we're going to steer a little clear of the NFL. We're going to talk about some of those bets, but just to get on schedule, we're not going to get this episode out before this weekend, week 18. So we're going to steer clear, just stick to college this week, and be back on schedule next week.
Yes, exactly like Freddie said. It's just going to be a college football centric episode. We're going to get into our bets. If you stuck with us last week, all three of our locks of the week did hit. So I would like to just go ahead and give ourselves a little round of applause before we kick things off. Way to go, gentlemen. All right. And then without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about some of those games this weekend. So, of course, we're going to be getting into the playoff games and what I would say was the best weekend of college football we've had all year. But before we do that, I'd like to talk about the only really bad game of the weekend and the narrative surrounding the Orange Bowl. So for those of you who didn't see it, it was a massacre. Georgia won 63-3. And a lot of people will point to this and say two things. They'll say FSU clearly didn't deserve to be in the playoffs and Georgia clearly did. I think that's bull. I think that we didn't learn a single new thing from that game, right? With 24 opt-outs, it was really just a waste of everyone's time. That was a shell of the FSU team. And I think it's completely unfair to judge either squad on that performance. So my big takeaway from that game is we can't let that ever happen again. I don't know how they need to prevent opt-outs from going. I don't know if maybe it needs to be a rule needs to be implemented that if more than 20 starters opt out, then you forfeit the game, something like that. I don't know. But that was not good for college football. That was not good for the viewers. That wasn't good for Florida State or Georgia. I don't know who that game was for. Mason, would love to hear your thoughts, man.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't say I disagree with you on it. I think that, I went over to my friend's house the day after the game and was talking to a buddy of mine who watches a lot of college football. And he comes up to me. He's like, "So what did you think of Florida State?" And I was like, I thought I learned nothing because they had like none of their team there. And he's like, "Oh, I thought it proved they shouldn't have been in the playoff." And I was like, "Okay, well, you're wrong, unfortunately, because they were missing so many of their players. I don't think it proved anything." And I think to the fortunate point of, or to what makes it fortunate about your point is that I don't think we'll see as many opt-outs in the coming years because with the way the playoffs are going to change with adding those teams, we're going to see obviously more teams there, so more players are going to be in there, so that's going to cause less opt-outs. Not to mention the fact that those teams that are going to miss out, they're going to be ranked 13, 14, 15. There's probably going to be some schools there with kids that are going to really want to participate in a bowl game. It's not like, for Georgia, it's just another bowl game. Half those kids really don't care. It's not the national championship that they've been to many times. So I think that narrative will change a little bit. Hopefully this is the last year that we have to feel this kind of pain.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mason. And I think that it will be. I'm hoping that, going forward, we're not going to see that many opt-outs because, even the 12 seed is going to have a shot to play in that national championship. So I'm hoping that kids are going to stick around. But yeah, man, that was tough to watch. It was tough to watch. All right, moving on to our next game. And that next game will be the Rose Bowl between Michigan and Alabama. What an incredible game. I say could be game of the year. Could be game of the year for me for sure. So Michigan was able to run away with it 27-20. Freddie, you got that pick. Nice job, my friend. Yep. Michigan's poor special teams play was a common theme throughout the game. It was really strange. Multiple muffed punts, just going after balls they shouldn't have, letting balls drop that they shouldn't have, missed extra points, just bizarre special teams play, which was kind of rivaled by Bama's equally bizarre center play. I've never quite seen a game of this magnitude with such poor center play. And what's bizarre is that Alabama's center hasn't been that streaky all year, and then it seemed like he couldn't get a single snap to Jalen Milroe. Every single snap was, a little bit low. It looked like he was fielding ground balls. And actually, that last play of the game that a lot of people are criticizing as a bad call, I think it was just a poor snap. And Milroe tried to recover as quickly as he could, which ended up being running right into my lineman. But if he gets a clean snap and he's able to run that RPO, Alabama could win that game. He had his receivers open on the left side. So it's really crazy. Like we said in our analysis last week, we knew that this game could come down to the last play, and it did. And it stinks, but when you're playing at the level that's that high, when you do a snap that's even a couple inches low, that can be the difference maker in the game. Mason, what do you think about the Rose Bowl, buddy?
I think that when you look at it on the Alabama standpoint, I think that, your point about the center, it's a really good point, because for Jalen Milroe, he's one of those guys that he's really got to be in a groove. He's got to be in a rhythm. And if you've watched him at all this year, you would understand that that's kind of how he operates. When he's not in a groove, when he's not in a rhythm, he doesn't play well. He didn't start the season well because he could never find his groove. He found it in the back half of the year. Here's the problem with the whole center thing. Every single snap, as you said, was left, right, up, down. It didn't matter, and including that last play of the game. And I think what you saw in that last play of the game was basically panic out of Jalen Milroe, because he never can settle in as soon as that, it can never, he's always got to think about the snap. And that's one extra thing that a quarterback does not need or want to think about. And he had to think about it on every single play. Not once was he settled into that game. And I think that is why, he wasn't able to pick it up, and he wasn't able to get it going. And then you look at that last play, and I think that shows everything, where he just he gets the ball, and it looks like he panics. I don't know necessarily if that was the play call to just run into the ass of your own offensive lineman, but either way, right? It feels like a panic. It was sort of a panic thing, and it just showed everything that Alabama had all night. They didn't have it. And, it says a lot, considering the fact that, as you said, Michigan had a lot of mistakes, and especially on special teams. And so they're very lucky that they got out of this game with some of those mistakes, because we've seen, in college football and I mean, heck, the NFL, teams that, special teams has killed an entire season. So they're very lucky to be able to get out of this, but very happy for Michigan. And they're definitely going to, in my opinion, I think it's set in stone. They're probably going to beat Washington, but who knows? Michael Penix, man, I'm not ruling him out. Not ruling him out.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Mason, and we will actually get into that a little bit later in the show, as some of the quarterback play, specifically from, I think, J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix, we should talk about, because we learned a little bit about both of them. So I will get into that a little bit more later in the pod. But moving on from the Rose Bowl, we are moving on to the Sugar Bowl. Another fantastic game. Like I said, probably the best week of college football we had all year. And this was between Texas and Washington. Well, Texas choked. And listen, I personally have to eat my words for what I've said about Washington. They have the best receiving core in the country. They deserve to be playing in the national championship. It was a world-class performance by Michael Penix. Texas got pressure, and he beat it. They had good coverage. He beat it. Okay? I mean, this whole year, I thought Oregon would beat Washington. I thought Texas would beat Washington. I thought Oregon State would beat Washington. They proved me wrong every single time. I simply, in good conscience, can't bet against Washington again after they've consistently proved me wrong over and over and over again. But really, my takeaway from this game was that Washington's offense is on another level, and they absolutely deserve to be here. What did you think about that one, Mason?
No, I agree. I think that their offense was exactly what it needed to be, exactly what we said they needed to be. They came out and they did it, and Michael Penix lit it up, and they were everything they needed to be. But also, to your point, Texas kind of choked this one away. They were in there for a good portion of it, but their offense just didn't move the ball like you would want at times. And then when they did, they weren't able to capitalize as much. And you look at, end of the game and everything, the whole thing, just Texas had a chance and they didn't capitalize. And it sounds like that is, sums up the Sarkisian era at this point, is having plenty of chances and not being able to capitalize. And so, it stinks for them, but at the same time, huge win for Washington. And to your point, it was a very big prove-it game for the college itself and the team itself, but also for Michael Penix Jr. on one of the biggest stages as well, which makes me even more excited to see him over the next game.
100% Mason. And that's a great transition. I will actually kind of get into, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of springing this topic on you guys a little bit, but I would love to kind of look at the play between McCarthy and Penix and kind of what that means. So McCarthy, he didn't throw for 430 yards, but he did lead his team when it mattered the most. He got that touchdown in the last drive when they absolutely needed it. Now, Penix, he had an all-star game. He had 430 yards, 2 touchdowns, 29 for 38. It was video game numbers, and every pass was a dart if you were watching it. Now, my question to you guys, did you think either of these performances moved these guys up on either of your draft boards? Love to hear your thoughts. Freddie, maybe you could start with this one.
Sure. So I have not seen the games yet, but as a rule, I do not let one game dictate anything. I look at consistent mechanics, and I already have 6 games on both Penix and McCarthy. So I'm very interested to get this new set of data, and both of them are in the next game. So I'm very interested to see what they do against each other. But as a rule, one game does not change my draft board.
Fair enough. Mason,
I think that's solid. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that, but I will say that it definitely had to have. I think it would have had to move the needle for a few GMs on, at the very least. I think for Penix, who right now, it's kind of up in the air where he's going to fall, and I think it at least had to move the needle a little bit for some of these GMs. And I think that by the end of this thing, right, he has another good performance. He's probably going to start getting mocked in the top 10. So I'm not going to be surprised to see that happen, and I look forward to the Michael Penix Jr. Moving forward. But for McCarthy, I think it probably moves the needle a little bit, but I still think that not as much as what Penix did is what I'll say.
Freddie, did you have another thought? Or
I was just going to tack on that. Yeah. So as we spoke about all these quarterbacks a little bit before, and we mentioned both of these guys as earning a higher spot on the draft board on draft night in the pre-draft process. Well, this counts as that. So while one game doesn't really change things, they get extra chances to show that, hey, I took a step from last week. I took a step from the season. Right? A lot of guys would look at the progression over the last year going into the draft. So they get just more time to do that. So Mason, great point with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys both have excellent points. The only thing that I would say for me is what it really did cement is JJ McCarthy's reputation as a game manager, because we've seen, and I wouldn't say that one game created that reputation, because we've been talking about it all year, is how he can come in and manage the games. Well, he did it on the biggest stage when it mattered the most. So I think that really solidifies him. He's not going to be throwing, like I said, he's not going to have games where he throws for 400 yards, but he's going to get the job done, I think. And I think that's really attractive to a lot of NFL teams.
And may I add, to his advantage, right? He's going to be able to, he's probably, I don't know where you guys have him mocked, but I think he's like second roundish. He's got a good chance to go to a very solid team, kind of like Brock Purdy. And so he actually may end up with a better, organization than half these guys that are going to get picked in the top 10. He may end up with a better career because of that. We don't know. We're obviously seeing that with Brock Purdy, but just an interesting tidbit there with McCarthy. He may actually be in the better position just by earning less money and getting picked lower.
Really great point. Really great point. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. I just wanted to bring that point up. All right. So moving forward, that wraps up everything I was going to say for my mandates. Now I'm going to kick it over to Freddie for him to, hit us with his topics.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. So I got to correct myself. I got to sit while I stand and correct myself. There is some big news around the NFL. So for those who have been following, USA Boxing just put out a new rule stating that transgender women have the right to compete against biological women in their sport. Now, here's the thing. Here's where it ties to the NFL. So Ray Rice came out a couple hours later, said that he started the transition process and that he's looking forward to, quote, legally beating his wife to a pulp in 4 years' time. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting and current. Von Miller and Kareem Hunt joined him, and they plan to transition this offseason. Guys, what do you think the NFL should do about this? Are they losing some of their best players to this domestic violence and all of the policies they have around that? Should they start giving testosterone to the girlfriends and wives of NFL players? What should the NFL do?
This is yours, Jack. I'm letting you take this one, pal. This is all for you. Enjoy.
I mean, are you asking me if there was an event where that was nationally broadcast and it was Ray Rice fighting his wife as a trans person, would I watch it? Yes.
It's not what I was asking. How can the NFL keep their players now? How many NFL? I mean, Tyreek Hill, another player. Like, how many players are just going to go over now to start the transition process and become boxers so that they can legally beat women to a pulp?
Well, Freddie, I think the big thing here is that it hasn't dissuaded them so far from beating them to a pulp now that it's illegal. So I don't think that making domestic violence legal would, be a good thing for the NFL, because right now it being illegal doesn't really deter them.
That's a great point. And it's not like they go to prison now. It's not like
Exactly.
they face regular person charges. They have their own justice systems. That's a great point. And I guess it was just a stupid question, but some big news around the NFL and the boxing world for those that follow it. So that was all I wanted to say on that. And now we can kick it over to betting.
Mason, why don't you start us off with the bets, my friend?
Sure. All right. So Tyreek Hill. Yes. I mentioned this last week, everybody. Tyreek Hill, this is like my lock of the week. Okay. Now, if you don't remember my lock of the week last week, Cardinals minus 12.5. Damn it. I should have picked the money line. The money line was very, very sweet looking, but hey, I'll take the win on the spread there. So I haven't checked a lot of the spreads, but I know that there's some good spreads this week. And I also know that there's some good over-under picks out there as well. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Either way, lock of the week, Tyreek Hill under yards. Now, the line is at 91. There's a reason for the line being at 91. If you've paid attention, Tyreek Hill's line has been around 97.5 for like freaking consistently for the last 3 to 4 weeks now, because he's been, playing very well. I don't think he had that many yards last week, but I will say this. He has played the Bills 6 or 7 times. The most yards he's ever gotten against the Bills was 69. And the last time he played the Bills earlier this year, he had about, 45 yards. I'm not actually looking at a stat sheet. I looked at it earlier today, but he has never gone over 69 yards against the Bills. That includes games with the Chiefs as well. I don't know why that is. Let's also point out that the last time he played them, he had it was 49 yards on 7 catches. That was the insane part. 49 yards on 7 catches. So he still may get the ball, but I don't think he's going to get yards. This one has never hit in Tyreek Hill's career. Who knows if it hits this week, but man, it feels like a lock. I'm locking it in. Tyreek Hill under 91.5 yards. That is my lock of the week. Freddie, I'll go ahead and throw it right over to you.
I appreciate that. Mason, that's an interesting pick. I hope it works out for you. So my pick of the week is going to be the Texans to beat the Colts and to make the final playoff spot, or even take their division, depending on the Jags. The Jags-Titans is not a lock of the week, but I'm taking the Texans to beat the Colts. I think the Texans do a good job in the trenches this week, and that's been the Colts' bread and butter. So the Texans do a good job there, coming with C.J. Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, win DeMeco Ryans that Coach of the Year award, and make the playoffs, lock it up. Jack, over to you for your lock of the week.
I really like that, Freddie. I really like that pick. So my lock of the week, boys, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment here, is Dalton Schultz over 4.5 receptions. Now, that is because he has a contract incentive that he is about to hit. If he gets over 6 receptions in this game, he gets an extra $500,000. I think he's going to be hitting that number, right? He's got a little bit of motivation. That's my lock of the week. Seal it up. And a FanDuel's got it right now at minus 108 for over 4.5. So really, go hammer that. Dalton Schultz has at least, I'm comfortable with him having 6 receptions because I think he's going to go get that money. I also have one more bet, and that is for Washington plus 4.5. Now, that's a tricky line, and I'm going to get into it right now. I think Michigan on the tape and what we've seen is a better X's and O's team. I just can't bet against Washington again because I've done it 3 times this year, and I've lost 3 times in a row. Every time I think they're going to come out and lose, they just prove me wrong. Penix steps up to the plate and does it. I can't in good faith put my money against Washington again. And I also really like that pointage. I think it either comes down to a field goal or someone wins by 4 off of a touchdown, off of going up by a touchdown. You know what I mean? But my point is, I really like 4.5. I think that Washington can stay in that range. And I'd also love to hear your guys' thoughts on the college football championship and who you guys are going to pick.
I'll say this. I like the plus 4.5. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a really good pick. And for Washington, right, they feel like they're kind of on the up and up. They're going to have a lot of momentum going into this game. If they continue to do what they do on offense, I think that this is definitely going to be kind of in that range for sure. So I like this pick a lot for you. And, I'm definitely not against it. I think that, look, man, I think Michigan might win the game. I've said it for the last few weeks, but Washington's definitely going to make this close, and they're definitely going to make this interesting because thankfully, this is not going to be a blowout. This is going to be a close game. Michigan's going to keep this close, whether we like it or not, whether it's their special teams, penalties, whatever, one way or another, this game's going to be close. So, I like this pick, Jack. Freddie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the pick as well. And I have to say, when you first said Washington, I went to the NFL and I was like, against the Cowboys, when the Cowboys need to lock up that division, I don't know. And then, against Michigan. Okay, I like this pick because, again, my entire context for this is watching film on J.J. McCarthy. So I haven't seen Michigan's defense. I've also seen Washington's offense, but I've not seen Washington's defense. But when I, specifically on the Michigan side, they don't put up a ton of points. As we were saying earlier, J.J. McCarthy is a game manager. Now, that can be great in a lot of different ways, but he's probably not putting up 35 or 40 on an average day. So correct me if I'm wrong. If Michigan's done that with their run game throughout the year, I don't recall seeing many high scores watching film. So I like the plus 4.5 for sure.
Awesome. So it looks like we are all riding with Washington plus 4.5, although Mason thinks that Michigan might win it outright. But we can all agree that this is going to be a hell of a game, and it's going to be Freddie's first full college football game of the year. So I'm excited for our buddy Freddie to experience all of the glory of college football. And, I mean, you won't get college game day, and it is kind of on a Monday in the evening, but it's still going to be a really good game.
And I have to say, last year was my first ever college game, and it was TCU. And I was like, oh, what? What are we looking at?
One of the worst games in the history of college football. Yeah. That was pretty bad.
Yeah. I do have one more bet I want to mention specifically here on this podcast to two Bears fans. I like the Bears to beat the Packers and knock the Packers out of the playoffs. I am not loving Justin Fields, and I don't think the Bears fans are making a good decision chanting for him, but I do not like the Packers film at all. So I'm going with the Bears and that defense to lock them up, and the Bears offense, to put up enough and to win that game against the Packers, knock them out. So I just wanted to mention that.
And it means the world to us, Freddie. It really does. It means the world to us.
He's right,
Awesome. I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah, I mean,
now before we
go ahead, Mace. No,
I just want to mention my worst pick ever. Okay, I just want to mention something that happened this weekend. So these guys got to hear kind of the fullness of it because they're in the group chat, and so they got to hear my rage. So I had a very nice parlay. I tend to do my picks on Sundays, but I'm actually trying to do it early this week. I'm very much preparing for this last week of the season. I'm excited, but here was the pick. All right. You get DJ Moore over 100 receiving yards, Puka Nacua over 100 receiving yards, AJ Brown over 100 receiving yards, and Brandon Ayuk over 100 receiving yards. Now, this was a pick that I was really confident in. I liked all 4 of these guys in these spots, and I especially liked AJ Brown in this spot because I felt that he was going to be able – I thought this was going to be a high-scoring game with the Cardinals. Well, sure as shit it was. Well, AJ Brown had like 56 yards. Now, here's the problem. At this point, the 56 yards of A.J. Brown, earlier in the day, all 4 of these games were the 1 o'clock games. Earlier in the day, Puka had already hit it. When I took the screenshot, he was at 118, and DJ Moore was at 110. And then Brandon Ayuk ended up hitting like 124. So I'm sitting there in the final like 6 minutes of this Eagles game, right? And I'm like, okay, just get the ball to AJ Brown, right? They're going to need a really big drive. Maybe we get a deep shot to Brown and he's gone, and that's all the yards I need. Because he needed, at this point, he was at 35 yards, so he still needed 65. Here's where everything went wrong. The Cardinals score the touchdown to take the lead, and to tie it, I'm sorry, they tied at 28 at this point. So it's a tie game. There's like 4 minutes left. And these knuckleheads, actually, it was like 2 minutes left. These knuckleheads decide they're just going to do an onside kick for the hell of it. And so you know what they did? They did not recover the onside kick. And because of that, the Eagles get the ball at like the 40-yard line, have a short field. Well, guess who they threw the ball to that whole drive? A.J. Mother Truckin' Brown. Yeah, he finished with like 60-something yards. And unfortunately, this one that when Freddie asked me, he asked me, he's like, what is this, like 17-1 odds? And I told him, what did I tell you?
125.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So if it tells you anything, the frustration of losing this one. This is one of, I've had some bad beats in the past, but this is one that I'm like, there's one with Gus Edwards that I'm always going to remember. This is now right there with it. And I'm still mad.
Welcome to the pros, my friend. Welcome to the pros.
Is he blacklisted now? Are you going to stop betting on AJ Brown?
No, I don't know. That's like, I think that's only like the second or third time I bet on him this year. So I'd have to look back at the history. I don't have a ton of guys right now that are blacklisted, but there are guys that I try to like stay away from. Every few weeks I put up the Justin Fields masterclass parlay, which has like, Justin Fields 3 touchdowns, 275 yards, 50 rushing yards, and he's hit it before. I'm gonna pick it this weekend to finish off the season.
Yeah,
he did. He hit it once. I swear to God, he hit it once or twice.
I believe it, and I have to say, talk about blacklisting. So something I learned early on, not as early as it should have been. There's something that I call the stability factor, the stability grade on head coaches. And so I never blacklist a player. That doesn't exist in my book, but I blacklist teams. I do not bet on the Chargers. Last year it was the Bucks. I couldn't touch, and the Chargers, Brandon Staley really, but I couldn't touch the Bucks last year. They were falling apart. So I blacklist teams all the time. The Eagles are on that list for me this year, 100%. Found that out maybe like midway through the season, once or twice if it was really specific situations, but I definitely blacklist teams. A little bit of an inside tip there.
I got you, man. I got you. The Bears are blacklisted for me. I don't bet on the Bears, and I don't bet on Notre Dame usually because it's an emotional thing. And I don't like you don't bet on the Bears? Teams. I don't bet on my teams because you're gonna view it wrong. Like I want them to kick the shit out of the Packers, so I'm gonna bet on them to kick the shit out of the Packers. But they're probably not necessarily gonna go kick the shit out. And then I'm not necessarily talking about this game. I'm just abstractly in general. Like I'm just not gonna be objective about it, so I can't do it.
No, that's fair. For me, it's kind of like a reverse psychology thing where it's like, like if I have a pick'ems every week that I do with my family. So like if I pick the Bears, like then I'm gonna pick like the other team's money line, just so like we're happy all around. But I'll say this about that, like I started the season because like this is, I would say I started betting last season, but this is my first full season start to finish of betting, and I started the season with that same kind of mantra of like I'm not going to bet on my teams. I'm not going to bet on my teams, even though I bet on Notre Dame at the beginning of the year, which they won me, which I appreciated. But I always said I wasn't going to bet on my teams, and then the Bears got DJ Moore, and then I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to bet this DJ Moore 100+ line because it continuously hits on really well, and they give it at great value. So
props don't count. Props are okay.
Okay, well, if props, so I'm not okay. Then that's fair because I think I've picked Bears spread once or twice this year, and it was because I was so damn confident. Like I don't take spreads unless I'm super confident. And if you haven't noticed, I really only take spreads when it's like -12.5. When it's those big ass spreads that, in my opinion, make no sense. Like those are the ones I love.
I love points. I almost always bet points. I very rarely bet money line. Occasionally I will if I think there's good value, but if they're going to give me points, I'm going to take the points.
Yeah, money line's really only good if you have like as you said, the good value of like, especially like in college football, if you have a lot of confidence in a team and they're
Right.
playing some big name school, that plus 550 looks really good. You're licking your chops looking at that,
100%. 100%. All right.
This has been the how to bet section.
Yeah, this is our
Yeah.
this is a little inside look into, or behind the curtain look into some of the gambling lives of your boys here on the podcast. Well, any other bets, gentlemen?
Yeah, I do have one that could be interesting. Ravens Steelers always play each other close, so a bunch of backups in this game. But I don't know what the spread's at, but you can get an alternate spread. Steelers plus 7.5, plus 10.5, something. Either one of those should be pretty solid.
I could be wrong. I'm gonna look at it right now. Rumor has it, now I heard this in a podcast today. Apparently the Steelers are the minus. Apparently they're the favorite because the Ravens are probably gonna not play a lot of guys, which
Right,
in my opinion, I've thought about it. Play the guys because they need them in, but that was what I heard. I'm looking up the line as we speak, but
that makes sense because Huntley has horrible mechanics, so he can work a decent bit in Greg Roman's system, but in this spread offense that the Ravens are running this year, primary spread offense, I don't think it's going to go that well for him. So it's definitely going to be interesting.
At a minus 3.5.
Okay.
So then the plus 7.5, plus 10.5 is probably going to be like minus 800, minus 1,000. I would estimate. So okay, not horrible if you wanted to put that in a parlay, but that's the only other thing I'd mention.
Ooh, I know the Browns are resting starters, but plus 7 on the Bengals. They are plus 7 to the Bengals. I think that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and the Bengals, the only thing they have to gain is a better draft pick by losing. So it's definitely.
Bears are plus 3.
Dude, give me the Bears money line for real.
What is that?
Packers are garbage. Packers are straight garbage.
Ooh, plus 136. That's kind of yummy.
Not understanding a lot of these lines.
Dude, that's kind of yummy. It's got to be the quote of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's because like they're just projecting so many backups play.
Right.
They don't know what the hell to think right now.
I was going to say, some of these lines are.
This is largely an unbettable week, but actually one more. Raiders to beat the Broncos. Give me Raiders money line. Those dudes are hungry. Sean Payton doesn't know what he's doing at all.
Yeah.
Dude, give me a Raiders money line.
That's a good pick for sure. Yeah, I'm not really feeling any NFL games this week, but I do like Dalton Schultz, like I said. So, okay, boys, those are our locks of the week, everybody. I know we took a long, winding road to get here, but that's who you should pick if you're trying to make some money this weekend. Anything else that we should be talking about, gentlemen, or we want to wrap this one up early?
I think I'm good.
I think it's time. All right, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us on another episode of Film Facts Stats. I am Jack Coyle. Other co-hosts, Mason Wood and Freddie Freeman. You can find us on where you listen to any major podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. You can also find us on YouTube and any major social media sites. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.